The anger doesn't start with words. It starts with tension, with sighs, with silence, with the feeling that something is wrong, without anyone saying it out loud. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe and like the video. This is DepthRealm, where we expose the patterns people don't want to face. A man sits down after a long day. He stops. He disconnects. He rests. And something shifts in the room. Not because he did something wrong, but because he stopped doing something expected. This is where most men get confused. They think rest is neutral. They think rest is earned. They think rest is invisible. It isn't. For many women, a man at rest triggers something deeper than irritation. Triggers threat. Not physical threat. Psychological threat. Because rest represents withdrawal of output. And in modern relationships, output has become the unspoken currency. Men are valued quietly, subtly, consistently by what they provide. Tension, energy, problem-solving, emotional regulation, presence, stability. When a man rests, all of that pauses, and pause feels like absence. Here's the truth no one explains to men. Women don't get angry because men rest. They get angry because rest disrupts emotional regulation they didn't know they were outsourcing. Many women rely, often unconsciously, on male presence to stabilize their internal state. His attentiveness grounds her. His responsiveness reassures her. His activity signals safety. When he disengages, even briefly, the nervous system notices. And discomfort looks for a target. This is not about entitlement. It's about attachment. In healthy dynamics, rest is mutual. In anxious dynamics, rest feels like abandonment. The modern world has intensified this. Women are encouraged to be constantly active, mentally, emotionally, socially, multitasking, monitoring, managing, anticipating. There is little permission to stop. So when a man stops, it doesn't feel like peace. Feels unfair. He looks calm, detached, unbothered. And calm in one partner can feel like neglect to the other, especially when emotional labor has become asymmetrical. Here's where the misunderstanding deepens. Men rest to recover energy. Women often rest to process emotion. Those are not the same thing. A man can shut down his mind and recharge. A woman often needs engagement to regulate. So when a man withdraws into rest, she experiences it as emotional absence. Not logically, nervously. And the nervous system doesn't argue politely. It reacts. This reaction often comes out as irritation. Must be nice to relax. Are you going to do anything? Do you ever think about what needs to get done? These aren't requests. They're bids for re-engagement. But they're delivered as criticism. Because vulnerability feels risky. Anger feels safer. Here's the part men don't expect. The anger is rarely about the moment. It's about accumulation. Accumulated unmet needs. Accumulated mental load. Accumulated resentment. When women feel they are constantly anticipating, organizing, remembering, and managing, a resting man becomes a symbol. Not of laziness, but of imbalance. Even if the imbalance isn't real. Even if the man contributes equally. Even if he earned the rest. Perception overrides accounting. Because emotional labor isn't tracked the same way physical labor is. And when emotional labor feels invisible, rest feels provocative. Now let's go deeper. There's another layer men rarely see. Male rest looks like freedom. And freedom is triggering to someone who feels trapped. Trapped in responsibility. Trapped in vigilance. Trapped in expectation. So the anger isn't really about him resting. It's about her inability to. This creates a dangerous dynamic. Instead of asking for shared rest, she demands shared exhaustion. Instead of requesting support, she resents his peace. And resentment doesn't create closeness. Creates control attempts. This is why men often feel punished for resting. Coldness, sarcasm, withdrawal of affection. Not because rest is wrong, but because rest breaks an unspoken contract. That contract says, as long as I'm holding everything together, you don't get to stop. But no one agreed to that contract explicitly. It formed silently, through habits, through assumptions, through unspoken expectations. Here's another uncomfortable truth. In many relationships, a man's value is tied to usefulness. When he's doing, he's valued. When he's resting, he's suspect. Not consciously, culturally. Men internalize this early. They learn that stillness invites criticism, that peace invites questioning, that rest must be justified. So they learn to hide it, to rest secretly, to disengage emotionally instead of physically. And that creates distance, because when rest isn't allowed openly, it happens internally. The man shuts down. The woman feels abandoned. The cycle reinforces itself. This is why arguments about rest are never about rest. They're about permission. Who gets to stop? Who gets to recharge? Who gets to exist without performing? And when the answer feels unequal, resentment grows. Now let's address the accusation men hear most often. You don't care. This is rarely true. But it feels true to someone whose nervous system equates presence with proof of love. When a man rests, his presence becomes passive, less responsive, less engaged. And for someone wired for emotional feedback, passive presence feels like absence. So anger becomes the tool to reanimate him. Not consciously, instinctively. Anger gets attention. Anger provokes response. Anger restores engagement. This is why rest triggers conflict. Because conflict brings him back online. And that's the most dangerous part of this pattern. When conflict becomes the only way to access connection, peace feels threatening. This is how relationships become addicted to tension. The man rests. The woman reacts. He disengages further. She escalates. Both feel misunderstood. Both feel unappreciated. And neither names the real issue. The real issue is emotional regulation. Healthy relationships allow both partners to rest without penalty. Unhealthy ones punish stillness. Now here's the turning point men need to understand. If you feel guilty for resting, you will resent being needed. If you feel punished for resting, you will detach. And detachment doesn't solve the problem, it deepens it. The solution isn't to stop resting. It's to stop apologizing for it. But also to understand the reaction. Not to absorb blame, but to see the system. A woman angry at a resting man is often expressing unmet needs poorly. Needs for reassurance. For shared responsibility. For emotional presence. But anger is a blunt instrument. It doesn't invite cooperation. Provokes defense. This is why so many men feel they can never rest without consequence. And over time, they stop resting around her altogether. They work longer. They stay distracted. They numb out. And the woman feels even more alone. The cycle feeds itself. Here's the part no one wants to admit. Some women feel safest when men are busy. Busy men are predictable. Busy men are useful. Busy men are controllable through demand. Resting men are autonomous. Autonomy threatens insecure attachment. So rest becomes framed as selfishness. Not because it is, but because it removes leverage. This is why men who set clear boundaries around rest often see one of two outcomes. The relationship recalibrates or it collapses. Because boundaries force honesty. They reveal whether connection is built on mutual respect or emotional dependency. Now let's be clear. This isn't about blaming women. It's about naming a pattern. Women are not angry because men rest. They're angry because rest exposes imbalance, real or perceived. And men aren't wrong to rest. They're wrong to believe rest must be justified. Rest is not a reward. It's a requirement. A man who cannot rest becomes irritable, withdrawn, and resentful. A woman who cannot rest becomes anxious, controlling, and reactive. Both are exhausted, and exhaustion breeds conflict. The healthiest couples understand something simple. Rest is not abandonment. Stillness is not neglect. Silence is not rejection. They allow space without panic. Pause without punishment. Disengagement without accusation. They don't weaponize energy. They don't measure love by output alone. And the final truth men need to hear is this. If your rest causes anger, you're not dealing with laziness. You're dealing with attachment insecurity. And that insecurity will not be solved by doing more. It will only be solved by clarity. Clarity about boundaries. Clarity about needs. Clarity about responsibility. Because love is not proven by exhaustion. And peace is not betrayal. The moment a man understands that, he stops apologizing for being human. And the moment a relationship allows rest without resentment, it becomes sustainable. Anything else eventually collapses. See the pattern. Protect your energy. This is DepthRealm.